Hello everyone, today we're going to be making Tokyo. Tokyo is a 3-in-1 blouse, which means you can wear the 3 pieces separately and mix and match them however you'd like with other clothes. I swear you'll become obsessed with this blouse, it's so cool. This pattern is recommended for more experienced sewists and it comes in sizes 32 to 50. Remember that every single one of our patterns comes with pattern instructions and sketches. If you'd like to try this pattern, remember you can find it on the link in the description. And here's a list of everything you'll be needing for this tutorial. Okay, so before we start sewing, we have to print out the pattern and assemble it. In this case, I'll be using the US letter format, but it also comes in formats A0 and A4. If you use Adobe Acrobat, you can choose which layers you want to stay on or off. This way you can print only one size if you want. And in my case, I'll be making size 36. Here I have it all printed out, and as you can see, the first 2 pages are mostly information about the pattern. And the first thing we have to do is assemble the first row by trimming off the left margins on every paper on the first row. And we're going to be using the margins on the paper as guides. For the second row until the last one, we're going to trim off the top and left edge. And we're going to assemble as normal. Once you have your entire pattern glued together, we're going to start cutting each pattern piece. This is the fabric I'm going to be using. It's a printed poplin fabric. And for the cutting layout, I'll be using the example on the pattern instructions as a guide. Once you're done cutting all of your pattern pieces, we're going to transfer the notches and markings to the fabric. Since this pattern has 3 separate garments, I suggest separating the fabric and patterns for each garment before we start sewing. We're going to begin with blouse number 1, and the first thing we're going to do is add interfacing to all of the pattern pieces needed, as shown on the sketch here. You're going to grab your bias tape and you're going to fold and press it in half just like this, just so it's prepped already before sewing. We're going to start by making the collar, so grab both colors and face them right sides together, and you're going to sew all around, leaving a 1 centimeter seam allowance. But you're not going to be sewing the lower edge. Before you turn it right sides out, remember to trim the corners. Make sure to give it a good press. Then you're going to secure the bottom edge with a top stitch. Now grab this specific color stand and fold the bottom edge 1 centimeter up and press. You're going to sew the collar in between the stands, facing the top collar with the stand with the folded bottom. Make sure to align the notches from the collar edges and the collar stand. Before you flip it inside out, make cuts along the seam allowance. Using your sleeve strap loops, fold them in half with the right side inward and sew, leaving a 1 centimeter seam allowance. Flip it inside out, press it, and cut it in half. Grab 2 sleeve straps, one with interfacing and the other one with no interfacing, and face them right sides together. You're going to sew all around, leaving the bottom edge open. Then you can trim the corners, flip it inside out, and press. And finally, you can make the buttonhole. Grab the corresponding sleeve cuff, and you're going to fold the bottom edge inward toward the wrong side of the fabric, 1 centimeter up, and press. Then you're going to fold it in half right at the notches that we have on both sides. And you're going to sew the sides, leaving a 1 centimeter seam allowance. Now you can flip it inside out and press. Grab your sleeve under placket and fold it as shown on the sketch. First in half, then each corner until you reach the middle, and then in half again. For the sleeve top placket, you're going to fold the top edges 1 centimeter towards the wrong side, just like this. Then you're going to fold the sides the same way, press, and then you're going to fold it in half, just like this, and press. Now we're going to prep the corresponding sleeve for the blouse number 1. First you have to cut the slit line. And you're going to insert the back side of the slit, which is this side, into the under placket. And you're going to sew it together. done that, you're going to insert the front side of the slit into the top placket. It should overlap by 1 centimeter. And you're going to sew as shown on the sketch. Now we're going to close the pleats on the bottom of the sleeves. Grab this notch, fold it towards the left, just like this, pin it in place, and grab the other notch towards the second notch on the right, and pin it in place. Make sure to secure it with a top stitch. Now you're going to grab the front and back and face them right sides together. And you're going to sew the shoulders, leaving a 1 centimeter seam allowance. On both of these seams, we're going to finish with binding. Once that's ready, grab the sleeve we just prepared and match the bodice with right sides together with the sleeve. You're going to sew them together on the armhole, leaving a 1 centimeter seam allowance. Make sure to align the sleeve notch with the shoulder seam. And you're also going to finish with binding and press the seam allowance to the sleeve. Now you're going to match the sleeve sides and bodice sides with right sides together and align the underarm seams so you can sew them closed. You're also going to finish this one with binding. Go ahead and grab the corresponding sleeve cuff and match the sleeve and sleeve cuff with right sides together. You're going to sew it together, leaving a 1 centimeter seam allowance. Now you're going to cover the seam allowance and the seam with the folded edge of the cuff. And you're going to top stitch all the layers together. Now go over to the front centers and you're going to fold them at the notches with right sides together, just like this. Make sure to press that in place. Now we're going to match those with their corresponding facings. Make sure that they're right sides together. Before we sew, we're going to fold the top edge of the facings inward. And now we can face them right sides together like this and sew, leaving a 1 centimeter seam allowance. You're going to press the seam open and press the center edge of the fronts inward at 1 centimeter. Once that is ready and it looks something like this, you're going to grab the back facing and face it right sides together with the front facings. Now you're going to match the bodice and facing with right sides together, just as I'm showing you. And you're going to sew all together right at the hemline, leaving a 1 centimeter seam allowance. Next, you're going to bend the seam allowance towards the facing and sew with a top stitch. Then you're going to turn the facings to the wrong side and press. And you're also going to fold the remaining edge of the back facing at 1 centimeter. You're going to sew it to the bodice with a top stitch at 2 millimeters from the folded edge. It should look something like this. Now we're going to attach the collar. Make sure to match the collar stand and neckline with right sides together. And remember to align the notches with the shoulder seams. You're going to sew this together, leaving a 1 centimeter seam allowance. Then you're going to flip the seam allowance over to the collar stand, and you're going to cover the seam allowance and seam with the folded edge of the stand. And you're going to top stitch all of these layers together so we can sew it closed. Now we just have to sew all of the buttonholes as indicated from the pattern pieces and attach the buttons. Next, you're going to move over to the back of blouse 1. You're going to measure from the armhole 4 centimeters up, and from the button 4 centimeters as well. That's where we're going to attach the loops. Then you're going to sew the raw edge of the sleeve strap to the sleeve slit on the wrong side of the sleeve, just like this. Now we're going to begin working on blouse 2. As we did with blouse number 1, the first thing we're going to do is attach fusible interfacing to all of the pieces that requires them, as shown on the sketch. And you're also going to repeat steps 6 to 12 for the same fabric pieces. So you should have all of these prepped and ready to go. Grab the front and back and face them right sides together to sew the shoulder at 1 centimeter. Remember that we are finishing these seam allowances with binding. Now we're going to attach the sleeve the same way we did with the other one. So make sure to match it with right sides together of the bodice and to match the notches. After that, you're going to match the sleeve sides and bodice sides and sew the underarm closed. You're going to repeat this on both facings. So match the sides on the facing together and sew. Once the facing is ready, you're going to match the bodice and the facing with right sides together, just like this. And you're going to sew the hemline, leaving a 1 centimeter seam allowance. Now we're going to bend the seam allowance towards the facing and top stitch. Next, you're going to turn the facing over to the wrong side of the blouse and press it in place. You're also going to fold the raw edge of the facing inward at 1 centimeter, like this. And you're going to sew it all around with a top stitch. For this neckline, we're going to finish it with binding. Then you're going to turn the binding towards the wrong side of the neckline and top stitch. Now we're going to prep both shoulder plackets. First, you're going to fold the indicated edge at 1 centimeter and press. As you know, we have notches, so fold them right over there and stitch them on the sides, leaving a 1 centimeter seam allowance. You're going to repeat this for both plackets. Then you can just trim the corners and flip them inside out and press. Now that both of them are ready, we're going to attach them to the raw shoulder seams on the front and back. But before we do that, you're going to make 2 gathering stitches so it matches the length of the plackets. Now you can match them right sides together, just like this, and sew the raw edges, leaving a 1 cm seam allowance. Then you're going to move the seam allowance into the plackets and sew all layers together. You're going to repeat that for the front shoulder and front placket as well. And sew the sleeve cuff to the sleeve the same way we did with blouse 1. Now it's time to make all of the buttonholes and attach all of the buttons for blouse 2. And attach the loops on the back side the same way we did with blouse 1. And you're also going to attach the strap the same way. Now we're going to move on to the skirt. As you know, we first have to attach all of the inner facing for the panels that need it. And you're also going to cover the placement of the buttonholes on the left front. Now we're going to close the darts on all 3 pieces. So fold the skirts by the middle of the darts with the right side of the fabric inward and sew them closed. Now you're going to match the front and backs with right sides together. And you're going to sew the sides, leaving a 1 cm seam allowance. These seams you're going to finish with binding and press them to the back. You're going to sew the facings the same way. But we're not going to be finished these seams with binding. Next, you're going to match the right front and the right front placket with right sides together. And you're going to sew, leaving a 1 cm seam allowance. Now you can just bend the seam allowance towards the facing and top stitch. Grab your waistline and you're going to finish its bottom edge with binding. Now you're going to match the waistline facing with right front placket facing and left skirt center edge with right sides together. And you're going to sew, leaving a 1 cm seam allowance. Make sure to press the seam allowances open and to press the left skirt center edge and the long raw edge of the right skirt placket inward at 1 cm, just like this. You're also going to fold the left skirt center edge at the bottom notch with the right side inward and secure, and the same with the other side. Now you're going to grab some binding and you're going to finish the hemline. Once that is ready, you're going to flip the skirt inside out, just like this. Just make sure to trim the corners before you do that. And you're going to bend the seam allowance on the waistline facing towards the facing and top stitch. It should look something like this. Then you're going to turn the binding on the hemline towards the wrong side of the skirt and sew it with a top stitch. We're almost done. Now we have to sew the plackets to the skirt with a top stitch, just like this. And you should also secure the waistline facing to the skirt on the side seams. And last but not least, make sure to make all of the buttonholes and attach all of the buttons where needed. You're finally done with your Tokyo blouse, and I'm absolutely obsessed with the results. I just love how this fits. It looks so good, and the best part is that you have 3 garments in one. If you loved this video, make sure to subscribe and like this video. We'll be posting a lot more video tutorials. Thanks for watching. Bye!